If you can hear me, raise your hand. All right. If you are a panelist, make your way to the front. Make your way to the stage. If you can hear me, raise your hand. All right. If you are a panelist, make your way to the front. Make your way to the stage. Do you want to introduce our panelists?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting, and then I'll have. Good evening. Thank you for coming to our March NAACP General Membership Meeting that is now actually a town hall. And we have some important things to talk about tonight, right? Yes, we do. So I won't hesitate because we have a lot of content. But I wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight. And want to make sure that we are. Am I going in and out? Oh, okay, because it sounds like I'm going in and out on here. I want to make sure that we have authentic conversation. I want to make sure that this is a safe space. We're not here to attack, but we're here to listen, we're here to learn, and we're here to give perspective. But most of all, we're trying to get to solutions for our kids because they're the ones, our youth, they're the ones who suffer. So we want to make sure that we are being transparent in our thoughts, but also being solution-oriented. So right now what I want to do is introduce our newest Education Committee Chair, April Ebenhart, and she's going to introduce our panelists.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. This is an important topic because our children are going through things all throughout the city, not just in Spokane Public Schools. I have a son who goes to Medical Aid. We have a panelist here who went to Meade and who is now in Spokane Public Schools. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Is that me? Oh, thank you. So we want to create this space tonight because we're tired of looking at headlines in the news that alarm us, and we want to hear from those of us who are in the building. We want to hear from a student. We also want to hear from a point of view that is academia from the Africana Studies Department to talk about the historical context of some of the racist things that play out every day. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Allie Campbell. She teaches at Adams Elementary. She's also a culturally responsive trainer through Washington Education Association. We have senior at Shado Park High School, Kanani Park, who also attended Meade and now goes to Shado and has opinions. We have Mr. James Alexander, who also works at Shado Park High School. He is a community support specialist and also a trainer for cultural responsiveness with the WEA, Washington Education Association, and other stuff related to equity work within the union. We have Natasha Carpenter, who has been in the Spokane School District for 20 years, which I think lends to a very wide range of opinions and a good vantage point about what she sees and has experienced. And I want to lastly introduce Dr. Finnie. He is part of the Africana Studies Department and has director? Senior professor. And with regard to what recently happened at Wilson Elementary, there was a flyer that asked students to dress up as a slave or hobo, and I wanted him to give context about the history of the archetypes and stereotypes that have been propagandized in our American society in ways that our children, even our educators, might not realize. So I'm not going to take any more time. Without further ado, I'll give it back to our president.
Thank you, April. All right, can we go ahead and advance to our questions? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask these questions, and I think that the panelists received these questions prior, correct? So we have a little bit of time to think over what we're going to discuss tonight, and then we will open it up to the audience for Q&A. So don't worry, we will definitely take your feedback, your comments, and concerns. So, first question. Seemingly each year we have some form of racial incident, microaggression, insensitivity, or pure racism. And each time we hear that there will be training. Is training enough anymore? And I'll start with Dr. Finnie.
Well, you know, when I consider this question, and I'm eager to hear what the response would be among you all toward the end, the basic issue is just like what Dr. King was all about. His whole nonviolent approach was to awaken people's conscience and to admit that something's seriously broken. And I think the key to this is not more training, but I think more of a widespread, universal kind of coming to the truth that what is happening in Spokane is a symptom of something that is seriously broken. And to admit that first is the step to reconciliation, is the step to improving. But I think there has to be, among the administrators starting, that what is going on today, what has gone on in the past, is a symptom of a major break that needs to be taken care of and addressed. And if we could get to that point, then we could have some interaction, we could have some conversation, and we could even look at maybe best practices of other places or maybe in a school. But I think the first thing is to admit something's really wrong and to have that voiced, have that put out in a public statement, and I think that is the beginning of it. After that, I think we have to look at what is systemically broken. But the first thing is a strong admittance that something is broken, and no more talking about training. But first, let's all admit, especially from the top down, that there is something seriously broken.
Okay, when I looked at this question, first thing is training. As an educator, training is optional, so it depends on what you want to get trained in. Diversity is not something that is offered or mandatory in the building, let alone school-wide. So we have to start with training. There's none. So that's where I read it and I kind of stopped because I said training is not something that is acquired for educators in Spokane School District. So.
Okay, yeah, I got it, thank you. When I first read this, I had two thoughts. One, I've done trainings. So I've done the trainings and seen some of the outcomes of what the trainings do or don't do. So when you have a training and it's just something that happens just once, there is no retention behind it, and that's the important part. And then from that comes the application. So if a training is not seen as something that needs to be taken upon and made personal, so that then it becomes a part of not only you, but the community that you work in, so that change could take place, exactly what you're talking about, where people can start recognizing that I do have a bias. I do have some stuff that I need to take and deal with because it's getting in the way of me being able to interact with people that don't look like or sound like me. And how do I take and have the opportunity to not just work on self, but start helping other people work on self as well. And so it's two parts. Training is important, but I think it needs to be something that's a continuum, kind of like a computer. A computer have updates. You always have updates. So what does the update look like when you do a training? What comes next that's going to take and add on to what you already know so that you can become more sufficient in doing what you're doing when it comes to looking at life and dealing with your students in school through an equitable lens?
In a student perspective, I didn't know that their training was required. I thought it was something that just happens. But I do feel like when people do train, I feel like it needs to be more enforced, and especially when something this serious happens or a racial incident happens in general, I feel like there's not enough action taken. And I feel like some administrators don't have the compassion to care enough, and they kind of just brush it off and make it feel like it's a box that they just want to get checked off, and then they just move on. But I do feel like training should be a required thing, because in schools nowadays, you don't know what you're going to deal with. It's getting more difficult, I would say. Thank God I'm graduating, though. I just want to say that it should be more enforced, especially with sensitive situations like this, because you don't know how a student or a teacher or a parent is going to react. So it's important to be courteous and compassionate of the students in your community that you do work for.
I have my own. Hi, I'm Allie. Some people call me angry, but I'm just passionate. Okay, here we go. Training, no, it's not enough. We know that it's not enough. I, as a 5th grade elementary school teacher, I am required to teach human growth and development to 5th grade boys. If I have to teach human growth and development to 5th grade boys, why is equity training not part of our curriculum? Like, it should be. Every educator, every staff member needs to have this in their curriculum. And I'm not talking about a diverse library in the, diverse books in my library, in my classroom. I'm talking about a standalone curriculum where my students are talking about social justice. Right now we're talking about the American Revolution. And my kids are the most engaged when we talk about, George versus George. When we talk about, was it right for the redcoats to open fire on these colonists? They like to hear the different voices. Training for educators when it's a choice for them to go, of course it's not enough. We've done CRCM, culturally responsive classroom management training, throughout the state of Washington, and there are school districts that have their bus drivers there, they have their nurses there, they have their office staff there. Anybody that comes in contact with a child is trained in equity. So what we're doing for our students right now is such a disservice if we're gonna call these 6.5 hours of equity training legit. It's just not enough. So is this a start? Absolutely. But I think we're all in a place right now, it's 2024, where these little baby steps, it's not enough. Like, we need to be taking bigger steps because our students, sorry, I could go on, I'll end it. Our students are coming to us in elementary school, ready to have some of these conversations, and staff need to be ready for it. So we, as staff members, need to be prepared.
You talked about the 6.5 hours of equity training, but those aren't required training. So it's up to the educator to do those 6.5 hours. If I want those on my professional development, I will take those. However, I do not have to. And that's what the disservice is, because everything is optional.
So let me ask a follow-up question. Is it a certain type of training that should be done besides just equity training? Example, anti-Black.
I think because of the history of discrimination in this country, the foundation should be anti-Black and move on to a deeper, broader scope. But the issue of training, it's almost, if you leave it optional, you're actually saying it's not that important. It has to be incentivized. It has to be a part of promotion, of salary increases. It has to be a part of the basic core of being an educator. President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, said, people don't care, and it's really the truth about students. Students don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And the issue of care has to be in this area of, I'm willing to learn how to receive you, respect you, and how to actually validate you. What's happening is that many folks of color and so-called, and even other cultures, are not validated. And as a result, the psychological safety goes out the window, and there is no real learning and no real development, is what you're saying. And that means the core of the education in this city needs to be along the highway of servant leadership. And the number one trait of a servant leader is the ability to listen. Not just hear, but listen. And listening requires that you drop your perspective and honor someone else's lived experiences as authentic and as legitimate. And we need a kind of a psychological revolution of educators in this city along these lines.
Yes, thank you. All right. Oh, sure, go ahead.
I totally agree with what Dr. Finnie is saying. And the most important thing, too, is relationship building, because educators have to be willing to take that step to know things about the students that they don't really want to know. But when you create a safe environment in a classroom, and I say this all the time, you will have students that's willing to go far and beyond for you as a staff because they know that you care. And that's the most important part. And I know, me having children go through the education system too, my thing when I had to go into the classroom was, do you know my son? And if the answer is no, then I already know what the issue is, because you don't know who he is. You don't know how he operates. You don't know how he works. So in the ISI room, I have the greatest opportunity because I get to sit and have conversations with students and have students come in and tell me stuff that I'm like, man, and you're still here, right? And that's like the important thing, is to recognize that even though we think that they're not ready, not only are they ready, but they want to take and have relationships so that they can come in and do what they need to do. That's the important part. What are we doing to make sure that not just educators, but parents also? It's a whole circle thing. I think COVID did a great thing because it allowed parents to see what staff had to take and deal with their children in the classroom, right? And so it was like it kind of built a bridge that said, okay, now I get it. But what's the next step, though, right? That's the thing. What's the next step when it comes to that?
I'm glad you mentioned that because, I'm born and raised in Spokane, and I went through all the schools. I went elementary, middle school, in high school, and even on to Eastern in Spokane. And my parents and grandparents did not rely on the schools to teach me about my blackness. So I had to learn about that from the community. I had to learn about that from the books that were brought into the house, the television shows, the music, everything that was part of the culture. I had to learn. So is there a balance between what the school is teaching about blackness and they should only know about not, or preventing racism or preventing discrimination, or should they be teaching black culture in the schools, or should the parents be teaching that?
No, I think there's a balance.
Both.
That's the balance, yeah. Because, oh Lord, okay. So if we go and you go to school and you learn about U.S. history, but you only learn about the U.S. history that's taught.
Go ahead and
That's
say the
more than
whitewashed,
that. Yeah.
the whitewashed history.
The whitewashed history, right? And you don't teach about anything else. Like, how many students know about the contributions that so many other cultures that live in this country have contributed? And when you really look at it, you kind of realize that they contributed more than white people did. But you don't learn that. So that's the reason why it's important for the balance. Yes, should parents be doing that too? Of course, absolutely. But the school district should be doing that too. Because then they're not going and just learning one side. Because then their perception of who they are and what life out is totally different. Because there's the conflict. Here I'm a black person, but this is what I'm being taught.
Yeah, why are our kids learning more about the Holocaust than they are about their own history? That, to me, is a crime. During Black History Month, I pride myself every single day wears a Black history, just something signifying Black history. Who's that? Shirley Chisholm. What does she do? What? You don't know what Shirley Chisholm did? What is that? That's the Black Wall Street. When did that happen? Did that take place? Those questions they should not be asking. We have history class starting at 10th grade, going through 12th grade. Why are they asking those questions? Because they're not being taught. I think that is a crime. Yes, parents should be in there. We should be working as a collaborative team. Parents, all the stakeholders, the school. But we should be teaching these kids about their history. They need a voice, they need a space, and they do not have a space that they occupy, nor do they have a voice in the school. And to me, that is terrible.
I'm actually going to pause. Hadley, we forgot the video. Do we want to pause for the video? I want to set the stage with this video that I found online. I think it gives a little bit more perspective. So if we can all turn to the screen here.
By white people, who've been taught by white people, taught by white people, using textbooks written to all of us, have been taught by white people, who've 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 been taught by white people, taught by white people, using textbooks written for, about white people. You pretty much only ever had white teachers. So if you're white, you were relentlessly reflected at the front of the room, and you could get through graduate school without having a teacher of color. Right? Or maybe one, maybe two. And if you're a person of color, rarely, if ever, did you see yourself reflected at the front of the room. So that teaching force, which is upwards of 93% white across the nation, and yet these teachers are now in the position to decide who's smart, who belongs where, who should be punished for what. And we see this empirically in the outcomes of tracking, special ed referrals, punishment, expulsion, the school to prison pipeline.
Like, I don't think y'all truly understand what Robin DiAngelo was saying here and how true it is. For instance, firstly, let's establish that roughly 80% of all teachers in this country are white, and in some districts that can be as many as, honestly, 100%. Concurrently, Black educators account for about 6% of all educators. For Black men, it's about 1.3%. And in some areas, like Minnesota, where I spoke recently, Black men are only 0.5% of all educators. There is overwhelming research and data that proves that Black teachers are better for Black students, and in fact, white teachers are harmful or bad for our kids. Having a Black teacher means our kids will perform better on standardized tests, and Black children who have Black teachers are more likely to go to college and less likely to drop out. Black teachers are also more likely to recommend Black students for gifted programs, and they're less likely to suspend, expel, or refer them for discipline issues. Oh, and this impact isn't just had on Black students. Black teachers had a positive impact on every student, all students, regardless of their background. For example, being assigned a Black teacher improved students' reading and math scores and decreased chronic absenteeism by roughly 60%. So does this mean that Black folks are just better teachers than white folks? Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, we can all probably say that we've had great teachers of all backgrounds. I know I have. But it's something that Black folks as educators mostly do differently that we can all learn from. And that is, Black teachers culturally demand better and have higher expectations for their Black students. And not just for their Black students, but for all students. And as an educator of 12 years, where 10 years I taught in a diverse school, I can tell you that this is true. On the flip side, studies show that white teachers, when given the same student as a Black teacher, is less likely to see that child as college material. And why is that? Well, it's based on social conditioning. White teachers work from within a hegemonic Western epistemological framework, which often predisposes them to have lower expectations of Black students and a lack of respect for the students' families and primary culture. We're not saying that black teachers can wave a magic wand, but what we're saying is this research suggests that white teachers' failure to address or value black students' primary culture could also be a significant factor in their academic success. So what do we do moving forward? Well, the first step is, of course, we need more black educators. But it's not enough to just say we need more black teachers. Y'all know how I feel. Representation matters is an incomplete sentence. We need to cultivate, mentor, and recruit black folks who we know have a nurturing, caring, and conscious spirit that's in tune with our culture to go into the classroom. Number two, white folks, there's hope for you. You need to truly challenge yourself, question yourself, reflect, and understand that you are included in these studies. No matter how much you've learned or how many of my videos you've watched, and understand that you have to set those high expectations for our kids and also understand the backgrounds in which they come from. And no, expectations alone won't cure this, but starting with that as an endpoint means that you'll understand the barriers that are in place and work to remove them using your place of privilege and your position to power to make sure that they can be as successful as they are supposed to be. Because let's keep it a buck, let's keep it real. If you don't have relationships with black folks outside of what you see in the media, where we are mostly depicted as gang members, gang bangers, gangsters, and thugs, and you're not reading books, and you're not unlearning, and you're not committed to this anti-racist life, then how do you expect to view our kids differently when you go into the class if this is the prototype that you have for blackness? The third thing, and this is not a full list, but this is what I'm giving you now: read, learn, understand that you don't know it all. Sign up for that online course that you need to sign up for. Your college did not prepare you for this. Your life did not prepare you for this. So at this point in your life, you're at a preschool level primarily in terms of understanding racial issues and understanding black culture. So act like that. Act like that, because you'll continue to have this hunger and thirst for knowledge. That bachelor's degree, that master's degree, that doctorate you got, that don't mean nothing when you're talking about what we dealing with. Matter of fact, in the classroom, we have a doctorate in our experience, and you are the child. And lastly, do not expect your black friends or black co-workers or black acquaintances to teach you a thing. This is your responsibility. You must commit to it. You must invest in it. You must bring in experts, myself, and other people do this type of work for a living. What Robin DiAngelo talked about here is a reality, but it doesn't have to be if we are committed to making a change moving forward. You ready to do the work? Yo, watch this right here.
Yes, everything that he said. So we'll move on to, did you want to say
I just
something?
wanted to go back to what was already spoken about with the, that's why I will fight for some type of curriculum, only because by the time my kids get to 5th grade and we've talked to them about, sometimes their first experience with being anti-racist is slavery. And that needs to change. We need to make sure that they understand, where we all came from, and they need to know that Africa is not. They weren't slaves there, right? They were educators, they were doctors, they were lawyers, they were moms, they were dads, they were stolen. So we need to make sure that they understand the history before we get into the anti-racist, I'm sorry, I can't remember what we were saying, but anti-racist part of it, because sometimes when we talk about anti-racist, we automatically go to slavery and being pushed down instead of empowering and seeing black people in a positive way. So we need to be careful when we educators introduce these subjects. I firmly believe earlier the better. But they need to understand that, because sometimes when they come to me in 5th grade, they've heard about Martin Luther King every January, year after year after year after year, and they don't know. They don't know. And so, again, I'll fight for curriculum. I'll fight for curriculum every day.
Okay, I just want to start off by saying my first 3 years of high school, I went to Meade High School, mostly white students. Rich white students, preppy, and middle of junior year, I impulsively decided to switch schools, literally in a day. And I remember talking to the counselor there, and there was no diversity. There was probably 4 people of color, and I knew them all. We were friends. And I remember telling him, and I was just like, there's no diversity here. Mead's slogan is, "You belong." And I told him, I was like, I've never once felt like that, ever. And I never, ever want to go back. I feel like switching was probably the best decision I've ever done for myself. I feel like I rescued myself from drowning waters. The tension there, how I was treated differently just because of what I look like, my skin. I am also mixed. I'm not fully. But I was still treated differently, and I remember telling him, I was just like, there's no diversity, there's no Black Student Union Club, there's no Black teachers. I was like, there was no even education systems of an African American literature class. And I remember when I did switch to Shadle, I was put in African American literature, and that was probably the best class I've ever taken in all of my years of high school. I learned so much, and my teacher was Mrs. Peak. She was amazing. She made me feel comfortable. I learned so much more about my culture, and I'm so much more involved, I would say, and I feel more comfortable doing it, which I feel like is really good. I also love how Shadle has Native American literature. I was in that this year. I am in that this year, and it's a great class. I love learning about different cultures, especially my own, because I can learn where we all came from and what my grandparents have been through. And I just want to say that I feel like it is super, super important to place Black education in all school districts. It's so important to know where everybody has come from, where people have been through, and yeah, that's all I want to say.
All right, so the next question. We cannot eradicate or prevent racism. So when our students or faculty of color experience it in our schools, how do we as a community show up for support? And what does support look like? I'll start with Natasha. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't want me to start with you? Each question, I'm going down the line.
Okay. I've been at Lewis and Clark for 20 years, and there was 3 Black teachers there. We're down to 2, and I'm pretty sure you guys know we have a Black principal. The other Black teacher is my brother, so that's kind of, so he helps me. However, he will be retiring, and I'll be by myself. It's already lonely being a Black woman, the only Black woman in the building. So when he leaves, being the only Black teacher in the building, it's going to be extremely lonely. I do have friends, but they're white, and they don't really get where I'm coming from at times. So it's extremely lonely feeling to know that. A lot of the students of color who come to my classroom, I don't even have. I never had them. They just come because they feel comfortable talking to me, or I'm in the hallways, so I'd be like, we're not saying that word today, that's not what we're doing, or like, you need to come here, you need to talk to me for a second. So they just know me from the hallways, but that shouldn't be, I shouldn't be their only safe space. They should have our school should be a safe space. When you walk into Lewis and Clark, you should be like, I'm good here. But that's not how they feel. And I feel terrible knowing that, because there's a lot of kids who go through, and we have Native American Lit, we have African American Lit, we have BSU, we have a lot of things, but the support for those things aren't there. And I feel like we need more support so we can uplift students, and we can have more students on the panel who speak as eloquently as you do. I'm one person, and I try so hard, and I know like April has heard my woes, and a lot of other teachers have heard my woes, like, you get tired. And I don't want to be tired for those students. I want to be an advocate and a warrior for them, but I wish we had more support, and that's what we're lacking.
What does that support look like to you?
Support is, for an example, I'm not sure, April, I'm gonna put you on the spot a minute, sorry. We offered to take the students to Seattle to see a Black college fair, and we asked for money for a charter bus to take them there. And to my knowledge, and April can speak about this a little bit more, we did not get that from the school district. We had to go outside of the school district to receive money to take students, local high school students, not just Lewis and Clark, but the high schools in Spokane, take those students to Seattle for this Black college fair. We weren't there a night, we were just stayed there a day, go there, come back, and the school district, no. So just support of that nature. When they asked for us to put a Black student union in each high school, and then we asked, can we have guest speakers come in? When we ask, can we go to Gonzaga or Eastern and sit in an Africana study class, and they tell us no. That's where the lack of support is. It's just simple things to show students that you care. That's it.
Wonderful, thank you. That was beautiful. I think the support looks like what NAACP has done tonight, so you all should be handed, let's give a hand to this kind of forum. We need forums like this where we can have exchange and interchange. I think Carl Maxey Center, a number of units in the city, and I think especially when it comes to the university, we could be much more involved in partnership with the District 81. We have a number of entities out there of African American and African descent origin. And for instance, we have a mentoring program that we use this not to build up our African American students, but to have them, it's called Lead to Succeed, where to have them leave our campus and go into the elementaries, go into the middle schools, go into the high schools, and show their face and be a part of a role model as students, because the closest link to the middle school folks, and especially the high school, and I think even on the elementary level, is to see someone that young speaking and carrying on themselves with that type of dignity and respect for who they are. So I think we need to increase our presence and our partnership with District 81. We would gladly give credit to students, and we do, at least 5 credits each quarter, to do something like that. And I think we need to tighten that up, and I think we need to have much more, I think, a stronger presence in District 81. You've got 44 or so elementary schools, 41 or so middle schools, and only 15 high schools in District 81. We have a lot of students that could, I think, bespeckle that whole setting. And by doing that, build up a kind of a role model, big brother, big sister setting that would become part of our tradition as a university and a tradition as a district. And I think we could strengthen that, and I think we should, to bring people that look like us into that setting. Just that alone, as was brought out, will change a person's self-concept, improve their self-image, and give them the possibility, if they're already in the university level, I could get there too. They're just like me. They relate to things like me. So I think that's one area of support that we could do. But the forums, I think, is another key that I appreciate you all doing.
I think networking, and that's actually something that I'm learning this year, thanks to my buddy April. So in the school district, we have what we call Nakia Academy, which is a great program, and it's specifically based for BIPOC staff. Being able to connect with people throughout the district, right? Giving you the sense that you're not alone. Even if you are in a building by yourself, you know you can reach out to people within the school district to give you that support, because it's different when you're by yourself. You don't feel like you have the courage and the strength to be able to do that. And a lot of times it's due because you don't want to have that backlash, right, of you being able to step out, of being considered to be the loudmouth, so to speak. But when you have that support, then you know that you can go and be that one and then say what you need to say so that you can take and make that difference, whether it's in your building or in the district. So networking is important.
Anything else? Okay. All right, the next question. How do we, go back. How do we teach our younger youth in elementary school or middle school how to detect if they're being mistreated due to their ethnicity? Or do we allow them to assume the good until a certain age?
I have to speak from a high school standpoint, since I'm in high school, but I can still take and address that. I think helping them to recognize that when somebody says something to you and it makes you feel some kind of way, especially if it makes you feel less than, then that's something that you can take and go and talk to a staff about if you feel like you can't address it on your own. Remember, we talk about what it's like when you have somebody for support. And teaching students how to be advocates, self-advocates. That's another thing that's super important is, does your child know how to advocate for themselves? And I'm sure everybody in here, especially if you have children or if you've been in the school district, you always have that one child or that one student that stands up when somebody does something wrong. They're the ones that speak up or speak out about it. So being able to connect them, get them taught on how to take and be an advocate, and then to teach their partners, because again, you can teach students how to network. They already know how to do that. They probably do it better than we do, right? So being able to do that and making them aware and giving them the sense of self-worth and self-value so that they don't feel like in order to take and have a friend, they have to sustain the verbal abuse.
I can speak on that as an elementary school teacher. I think common vocabulary. We get a lot of kids that say, he said something that was racist, and then when we get to it, it's like, was that really? So I think common vocabulary starting at an early age is very important. In my 5th grade class, my students, we define racism, we define implicit bias, we define stereotypes and prejudice on the very first week of school so that we can refer back to it. Also, kids are told a lot of times, don't be a bully or don't be racist or don't do this or don't do that, but they don't have the skills. So to teach them and give them, again, the vocabulary to use to role play those situations when something does come up so that they are prepared a little bit more than just don't do that, I think is really important. But again, I think it's also important to teach our kids that not everything is should be taken. I think that it's important to teach them that how they're feeling is important, but to be critical thinkers as well. I think when you teach kids to be a critical thinker, think about it. When your kids are little, they're asking millions of questions, and as we get older, we stop asking those questions, right? We stop looking for answers because we assume we know it all. So teaching kids to be critical thinkers so that they can have these conversations, these courageous, tough conversations, necessary conversations, I think is really important. But to have that common vocab would be a start.
I think, too, I really appreciate what both of you have said. Do the schools still say the Pledge of Allegiance? Yes. Yeah? Okay. I think what could be focused on is those last few words, liberty and justice for all. And tie it in, especially for elementary people, on that level, tie it into this fact that even though we talk about liberty and justice for all, even though we're the country that professes that, there is something called unfairness that runs rampant. And to get that idea in their minds that unfairness needs to be confronted, needs to be dealt with and not tolerated. And I love the fact that they would get even much deeper than the words of unfairness. But even to see the backbone of all that you're talking about has to do with unfairness. And I believe, after seeing many, many teachers, I've been at Eastern since '92, and I've seen a lot of teachers come through and then come back and tell me they'd like to change the curriculum, but they can't. But I asked them, can you put in biographies of how people dealt with unfairness. Young people, very young people, can relate to the lived experiences of a wide span, starting with our indigenous brothers and sisters, and how individuals dealt with unfairness. And just sprinkle that into the curriculum, not asking for the district to okay something major, but put in biographies of how people dealt with unfairness and have that as part of an understanding that that's what liberty and justice for all is all about, how to deal with unfairness, and to see it in a simple way, but to see it in a consistent way, grade after grade, grade after grade, because that's what our whole history is as a country. We're the only country that claims liberty and justice, but we do have this history of changing for the better. It just takes a lot of time, takes a lot of blood and tears and sweat, but the possibility, the potential, the capacity is here. So I think biographies would be a big help. I use that a lot in my classes because biographies say things without you saying, here's what you need to know. Look at what this person went through and how they came through dealing with unfairness. You can also be that kind of person.
So I'm going to take a personal privilege as the president to ask a question that was not part of what was sent out to you all. The N-word in schools. So that's something that happens quite often, not just from the students, but has happened several times with faculty. Now, last year, myself and the education committee, Amy, we dealt with one of the middle schools where they had say the N-word free day. So all the students can go around and say the N-word without repercussion. Well, I'm not going to put the school out there. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But ask me later. So, yes, this was a thing. This was a thing where the students were saying, you can say the N-word and no one's going to say nothing to you. It was the National N-word Day that they could say the N-word. So my question to you all is, and we know, let's be real, as the video said, let's keep it a buck. We know that culture in the music, in the movies, in the television show, the N-word runs amok. And it's deemed as being cool for some kids to use the N-word. You hear it in sports, you hear it in music and television, you hear it all the time. Sometimes you hear it in just regular everyday conversation between two people. So my question is, what happens when you're hearing it in the school, not only amongst the students, even if they're saying it casually? How do we deal with that? Because what happens is when students are saying it casually amongst each other, they think that their non-black peers, they think that they can say it too. And then there's this National N-word Day. You're my friend. You can go ahead and say it. I'm not gonna do nothing to you. So how do we prevent that? And then now with our faculty who think that, oh, I'm just reading the book. It's in the book. You know, what are your thoughts, and how can we shift that? Oh, nobody want to take that.
That is a big challenge. I have to start off with that. And the reason being is because I've talked to many students, and one of the things that they say is, we say it all the time at home. So when we really truly think about that, it has to start at home first. It has to. Because if it's okay for them to do it at home, they're going to bring it to school, and then they're going to take and perpetuate it. And so everybody that's doing it, like you said, it's already in the movies, it's in the music and everything. But when you don't have the conversation at home that says, we're not going to say that in this house because this, and this, that's what changes. If it doesn't, then it won't. Now, all people, they grow older, they get older, then once that happens, they get to choose to do whatever. The hopes is that they keep it, right? Like I have, like my two older boys, I know for sure, they don't use the N-word, right? Can't say that much about my younger ones, I'm just gonna be honest. But they were brought up with that, right? And when it comes to staff in the buildings, well, I mean, you kind of have some staff that kind of feels like, well, if I have a black granddaughter or a black grandson, then I know, so why would I not be able to say it? Yeah, that's what I said, but when you have those different perspectives, it's how do you take in, I can't undo something that you feel like you have the right or the privilege to do. But what I could do is help you to recognize and understand that your right and your privilege is not truly a right or a privilege, because it causes harm to other people. And it places a not so good value on your head because it seems like that's a choice that you're making. So now you get put in this category that says you're racist, even though you want to say I'm not, but your actions and your words says different, right? So that's the thing. So my thing is, starts at home first. It also needs to be conversations in the school. Like our BSU, I literally said, you guys need to take and divorce that word. And a lot of them laughed because it was funny, but they understood after we had conversations. Now, do we still have it going on in the building? Yes, we do. But a lot of them don't come to the BSU anymore either. So, but I understand. But yeah, we have to start at home. We have to take and be okay having the conversations. And even the white teachers, the white staff has to be okay recognizing that that's wrong. And I can have that conversation, because you can.
I think there's a lot of educators out there that are not prepared to have that conversation. So hearing it in the classroom, right?
While I appreciate that, I think that's what we're trying to get at is how do we deal with it in the school when it's being said in the school. I think he was saying that for most people it starts at home. Now, how people govern their houses, we can't control that. But in the schools, what can these instructors and what can these faculty do when they hear that word?
If I have a student that's using that word, the other students, all the other kids in the upstairs, I'm on the 3rd floor, they all stop. Like, did you hear what he said? That's a conversation that we have to have, because my kids aren't going to continue to learn and feel safe if they know that I let somebody get away with saying that N-word. So those are conversations that, it's just like if somebody uses any other kind of slur, like to define, like, this is so dumb, we hear that there's other slurs that are being used instead. That's a conversation where I stop my teaching. I'm sorry, I do, because I can't continue. People here, I am Mexican. When my kids were at a small farm school down in south of here, and somebody called my son a stupid Mexican, you better go back across the border before the wall gets built again, and nothing gets done. And so other kids around have heard that, and they think it's okay to continue calling my son a stupid Mexican, and the teacher did nothing about it. I have a problem with that, because the other students that are still trying to learn in the classroom think that that's okay. So yes, I agree. My main job is to build relationships with my kids, build hope and resiliency, build relationships with their families. I would never, and I don't think that that's what James is saying either, I would never tell a family that they're wrong. But in my classroom, where my main job is to teach, and it's disrupting the flow of my teaching and it's impacting the rest of my class, there needs to be a conversation. And where I was gonna go with that is, I don't know how many educators are able to have that conversation, and it goes back to the training, right? Like, what kind of training have we gotten that explicitly says, because from what I understand, the N-word is a non-negotiable. It's an absolute, you do not say it. And it's
Staff
for
and
both.
children.
Right. 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 So, no, I can't tell nobody what they can do in their home. I really
Tell nobody
can't.
what they could do at home.
However, it is our job as educators to police the community and environment in the building. And so that's what I'm talking about. So that's the reason why I said when students are having that, we do have that. So as a parent, if you're cool with your child saying it at home, that's fine. But what I'm saying is you can take and let your child know when you're at school, watch your language, be mindful of that. And then when you go home, you can do whatever. It's just like parents that allow children to smoke weed or to vape. If you okay with them doing that at home, that's fine. But you can't. Yes, thank you for sharing that too. And the reason why I'm saying that too is because we have those types of things that come into the building where you have students that take and have vapes and all those things, and they say that my parent allows me to do this at home, and I'm okay bringing it to school. So it's kind of the same thing where we have to still police that to make sure that the environment and the community within the building is sterile, I'll use that word.
I will have time for one more comment. I wanted to be a time check that it is 7:30 and want to be able to give room for audience participation and Q&A and comments. But I do want to go back to the middle school that had the National N-Word Day, because when NAACP did call them and ask them, you know, we talked about, you know, their solutions and what they can do, and they said that, you know, they took care of it. But their biggest issue is that the other racial slurs that they're having, that they're seeing, because they're seeing more Marshallese students, they're seeing more Mexican-American students, and they're seeing more of those racial slurs. And they feel like we don't have anyone in the community who we can go to talk to these kids about the difference from their actual community. So they're wanting NAACP to do it. And so it's us going in there and having those conversations with them as well. Is NAACP enough for all of the cultures, or do you believe that there needs to be other organizations or other people or trusted messengers from different cultures that go into those schools and have those conversations with those students?
Well, I know, like Latinos in Spokane, they just got the policy passed that Border Patrol can no longer go into school buildings. So I think educators need to be, yes, right? Educators need to be educated in all aspects. You know, if there's an educator out there that doesn't know a whole lot about the Marshallese community, dive into that research, talk to people, visit with people, ask questions. But again, for like, I'll use Latinos in Spokane, with the policy that was just changed, you know, that's important. Educators, again, I go back to 2016, one of my students came in tears the day after the election because she was told that that wall in her 5th grade head, that wall, after the former person was elected, it was gonna go straight up. She had no concept of the policies that had to be in place and it's gonna take time to build. She just knew there's a wall going up. So I think educators need to be educated in a lot of different areas. It's not just about reading and math anymore, unfortunately. Or fortunately, right? There's so much to unpack. And trainings that we've been given or trainings, nothing is enough, right? There's always going to be more. But we have to have a district, we need to have educators that want more, that want to push us to all of those different avenues so that we are better prepared for our students. Because like I said at the beginning, our students are coming to us with questions, with things that they've seen on the news or TV, things that they've read. They're looking for us, to us for answers. We need to be prepared for it.
Yeah. I just want to add in that the guiding principle is context. Me and my brother back in Oakland, the N-word is one thing. But in my classroom, that there's not even a possibility. And I tell the students that from day one, because it's a matter of context. If I wear a tank top on the golf course, that's okay. But if I wear a tank top to my interview to get that promotion, that's not okay. It's a matter of context. So I don't think we can police, I don't think we can judge, but we have to respect the guiding principle of context. And in a school setting, professional setting, just like I wouldn't go to an interview with a tank top, the N-word is not allowed, period. Yeah.
Callie, can we go to the next slide? Well, we're going to open it up soon to audience Q&A. We're coming up. We're coming to you. All right. So the last question. Oh, I think you had something to say. You had something to say? Yeah. Go ahead, baby. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Really. I do feel like, back to what you were saying, how you were saying, like, whatever the educators, the administration do is not enough, because it will never be enough. I hope that once I graduate and the schools, elementary, middle school, high school, I hope that they can build up to really learn that educators do need to be educated in all different aspects of education, whether that's socially, emotionally, mentally, physically. All of it is just, it's so important. And especially being a teacher, you want to build relationships with your teacher. Alexander has helped me through so much, really. We've been through thick and thin. But I just feel like it's so important for the teachers to be compassionate and actually want to do it, not to feel forced to do it, because then it really seems like, oh, you really don't care. You just want to get it over with. Whatever I have to do just to get through it. Like it doesn't seem like it's enough. It doesn't seem like you're willing to actually work with a student to help them through something. And even with like the slurs and the N-word and all of this, I feel like in society today, it has become so socially acceptable, which is not okay. I've heard so many white boys say it. I've heard my teachers say it. And when I was shocked, I was shocked. I was just like, are we doing this right now? Like, even though we were reading How to Kill a Mockingbird, I'm just like, ER too? Ooh, like, oh,
Strong ER. Huh?
That was crazy. And she was like, no, it's okay. Like, it's because we're reading a book. Like, it's okay. Like, we're learning about it. But still, just like, no, you wanted to say it. Like, really, you wanted to say it. Like, be for real. But I just feel like it is important for the educators to help students recognize how they feel and how to control it, especially. People are rude. People are so mean these days. And they'll say whatever they can to destroy you, but you have to learn that you can only control what you can control. You can only learn from the bad in order to get through to the new. And I feel like it's really important to pay attention to what students say to each other, how it emotionally and physically affects them, because it's true. Mental health is terrible in schools, and I feel like that's also another recognizable thing that needs to be happening soon. But that's basically it.
All right. So the last question before we get to Q&A is, how do we empower educators to address racist students in environments that may lack support from faculty? Because there are some racist students, not just faculty members, those students. Well, I mean, we don't have to. We can skip over it.
What I said on my little note card. I said, when an educator stands up in a racial situation, as a student of color, it makes me feel so proud. It makes me feel seen. It makes me excited. It makes me feel like I'm accepted. Like, oh my gosh, we're doing this. Like, I'm like, period. Like, you got this. But also, when I do hear or witness racism between students or teachers, anybody really, and nobody sticks up for it, I honestly feel scared. Like, I don't feel safe. I feel like, oh my gosh, what are you going to do next? Like, are you going to do something bad? Like, out of pocket bad? Like, how do I protect myself from it, right? And obviously, it makes me feel really disappointed. It makes me feel, not even just me, though. It makes me feel ignored. It makes me seem like you really don't care about your students at all. Like, how are you going to be a teacher and just not have any compassion of any sort on any level? But it does make me feel ignored. And I just want to say that teachers, educators, administration, they need to remember that they have the free will choice to make a difference in somebody's life. You can either choose to ignore it, or you can take it in action and actually do something about it. But they do need to remember that with a little comment, it's always the little things that it could really change a kid's life, and it could really open their eyes and really seek better and be hopeful for the future.
Anyone else from the panel want to take this question?
She did a great job.
Okay. All right. So now I guess we'll turn it to Q&A. So I'm sure we have a lot of questions. I don't know. Maybe not. I see Kara back there with her hands up. Okay, we have some up here.
We do have the guy over there. His hand was up first, and then Kara was next. Or Kara? Oh, she was standing up. Who was? Okay. 1, 2, and 3.
So, that's loud. I just want to say thank you for this conversation. I guess I'm a little confused. We've done a lot of talking about students. And one of the, I work in early childhood education, and one of the things that I know is that our children are representations of the environment that we put them in. And I have not heard, and I came in half an hour late, so I'm gonna put that out there, but I haven't heard a whole lot of conversations around what happened at the elementary school. I haven't heard about, we're talking about racist students, and to me, that feels like gaslighting our Black and brown students. What we should be talking about is, why is it okay that a school, adults, administration, or administrators and teachers thought it was appropriate to ask students to dress up like hobos and slaves? That's what we need to talk about. And I'm looking, and I'm curious how, as teachers of color, and we've talked about what it feels like to be alone, but I want to know, what happens when that crosses your desk? What do you say? Who do you reach out to? How do we activate? Because I see a whole lot of people sitting here, and the majority of us came to have that conversation. Can we talk about that?
We can, and that was strategic because we knew that it was going to come from the audience. So we're glad that you kicked it off.
But when we're talking about what happened at Wilson, we also need to talk about what happened at Shadle. We also need to talk about what happened at Sacagawea. We also need to talk about what happened at Lewis and Clark. We also need to talk, so we're talking about a lot of schools. This is not just one school where educators feel like the N-word, they can say it without any repercussions. There's something going on in our district where educators do not have, as a Black woman, I do not get up in my staff meetings and speak passionately because I'm an angry Black woman. But my white peers can get in front of their classroom and say the N-word freely with nothing to happen, nothing occurs. Why is that okay? That is not me as a Black educator who should go in and then teach them what is the school district doing to stop this. I don't even know how it feels as a student to have my teacher say the N-word, and then I'm looking at them like, what? Knowing that they're gonna be back tomorrow and nothing's gonna happen. So we need to talk to the district and be like, we have this diversity equity training. Is it working? No. So we need to have, the people on this panel don't need to be here. We need to have, I'm sorry, Dr. Swinyard here talking about that.
Yes.
I have a question over here from a graduating student from Meade, so here you go.
Hi, my name is Kiki. I graduated from Meade last year. I grew up in the Meade High School district, and somebody mentioned they'd like to know what it was like for someone who, grew up in the district, and it was hard. And I, experienced a lot of ignorance. And I would say that, a child isn't born racist, they're taught it. And and on somebody up there mentioned the content. And I think that's really what it's about is, what are these kids learning from, kindergarten and up? And I know what I learned. And I learned the history from a white man's perspective. And I learned, it wasn't taught that, black people did all these great things, Black Wall Street. I was taught they were slaves. They were oppressed. White people were, they held the power. And it just was like, I kind of took a step back and was like, this is really weird, And I have an older sister at Eastern who took a lot of African study classes, and she would tell me about them, and I'm like, wow, this is, I'm like, this is really cool. And I really wish that those classes were offered at my high school and my elementary school. And it's just the comments of the kids, but I've learned that they don't know better. Their parents taught them. And whether they're conscious about it or not, it's just unconscious biases that come out of like, oh, your black brother can't read. And it's like, he's more than capable. He's a very smart young man. But he learned that, if I kind of sit back, someone's going to do the work for me. And he learned that he didn't learn the confidence because it was so heavily pushed that black people were oppressed. So in the classroom, a kid looks at us and says, I'm sorry for what we did to you. What do you mean? I'm not a slave. So it was like, what are you talking about? I'm me, And, I was adopted from Ethiopia. I'm here, I wasn't a slave, but it's taught to the whole class. If your skin was darker, you were a slave. So the kids think, that black girl over there, she's a slave. And it's like, hold on. No, that's not how it works. But I learned in time that it's just the ignorance, and it's not the kids' fault. And it's the social media of just normalizing the N-word. And it's like, another person mentioned, what's the discipline? There is none. It's, I was raised, if someone said something mean, tell an adult. And that's what I did. But the adults didn't do much. The response was, kids are kids. And you kind of feel helpless when it's, I did what I was supposed to do, so what are, the teachers doing? When are they going to start playing their role? But it also just was never talked about, and that's why I came here today, because I'm so glad and grateful that it's being talked about, because I have a 2-year-old black niece, and I don't want her growing up in the same education system I grew up in. I don't want her to, go through the same things I did. So, I'm really glad that it's now being talked about. And I think it's, time for the change of content, that's been around for how long? How long has the education system been the way it's been? A very long time. So I think it's time to start changing those curriculums because they're really old. You see everything else in the world advancing, so why hasn't the education system advanced? I do want to say, Kiki, hi. I feel like when we both went to Meade, we went through a lot of similar situations, especially with a lot of the white kids saying the N-word freely. But then you would speak up about it and you'd be like, hey, like you can't say that. But then they'll get mad at you for calling them out. So then you have to be quiet or you're going to get in trouble. You always have to it's like you always are stepping down from something that you know you need to stand up for. And especially at Meade, like not even changing the education system in the 81 districts, but with every district in Spokane. Like Kiki said, she was like, people aren't born racist, they're taught it. And that is such, I honestly get chills from hearing that because it's so true. It just sucks how like nobody, still, even past the Civil War, even past what Dr. King did to help us before he did pass, nothing has changed, really. In reality, nothing has changed. It has been the same. A lot of people of color have been silenced. Nobody has gotten free will justice. And, you know, I look back on it like all the time and I'm just like, there's no way. Like I don't know. It's just crazy to think about how people will shut you out for trying to stand up for what's right when reality, you know it's wrong, but you're still going to do it, right? Because, there is no discipline. Nobody's going to do nothing about it except you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get bashed. So obviously, I feel like, especially at Meade, you get silenced a lot. A lot. It doesn't matter what the occasion is or anything. You will get silenced. And it sucks because you feel hopeless. But yeah.
I'm sorry, real quick, going back to Kiki, what you said about curriculum. If you're a parent, elementary school parent, I'm just going to say, we just adopted a new curriculum, reading curriculum. There were many concerns from fifth grade teachers in my building because one of the pages talking about George Washington, one of the lines in the text is, back then, everybody owned slaves, so George Washington did too. This is what our kids are reading. This is what they're understanding. Oh, everybody was doing it, so our president did it too. As a parent, I encourage you to check in with your child's teacher to find out what is the curriculum. What are they learning? It's a brand new curriculum this year, and there were many issues that we found with this. One of them being Thunder Rolling in the Mountains, which is a fifth grade novel, was written by a white man. And it's told from the perspective of a teenage indigenous girl. And so again, where is the equity? Where is the diversity? Where is the true voice? It's not there. So again, I encourage you to see what your kids are learning.
Hi, I teach at Sacagawea Middle School. Okay, I teach at Sacagawea Middle School, and I want to say that I've only been in this community 3.5 years, and experiencing racism the way I've experienced it here, never in my life. I moved here from Louisiana. I am from the Deep South. Nothing like I've experienced here. And to be as diverse as the schools are becoming, I think it starts with the teachers, because we're with the kids more than anyone, and I hate to say it, even more than their parents, day in and day out. And I believe the training needs to start with the teachers, and they have to want it enough. And it goes back to what Dr. Finnie said. We have to admit that it's broken and they're the problem. And I'm happy to see so many of us here tonight, but we're not the ones making the decision. Where is the district? Where are the ones in the seats? Where are the principals? Where are the administrators? They're the ones who are making the decision. And I'm sorry about the new curriculum, but guess what? The teachers are not the ones who voted for it. It's the people there. So it has to start with them. And my thing is we just have to come to an agreement that there is a problem and there needs to be training. I mean, I'll give you one example. I also coach basketball, and last night my girls had a game, and one of my players, she's biracial, really cute, and just one of the other coaches came up and wanted to touch her hair. And I was like, oh, wait, We don't do that. And my colleague is older than I am and been teaching here in the district long time, but just didn't know. So that's my thing. Even with that, we need to get to know our students. And my player just like smile like, and have, Coach K, thank you. But I mean, have not had the voice to tell people, just don't touch my hair. And even as an adult and as a teacher, I've had to tell my own staff, don't touch my hair. So I think we need to admit that it's broken and that we need to start there.
Can everybody hear me? Oh, I guess it's about time, right? I've heard a lot tonight, and I don't even know where to begin to address any of this, but I'd like to first to say I'd like to work with any teachers who want to work with me. I'm a college professor, and I do a lot of work around equity, inclusion, and diversity, but I also teach African American literature. And we deal with a lot of these issues that you guys are talking about. But in terms of what it sounds like to me, the black community in terms of the educational system here is very disjointed and disconnected. But I'm also hearing fear. I'm sensing fear in terms of working together. I didn't hear anything about a local coalition. I didn't hear anything about working with grassroots organizations. I didn't hear anything about maybe reaching out to other states that is doing this type of work. I didn't hear anything about when you're talking about teaching elementary school kids, you're talking about teaching African American history, you're teaching anti-blackness or anti-racism in these curriculums. I think the administration and the teachers can do things themselves, and they can actually go out. They can outsource, they can talk to people, they can get online, they can find other organizations. Someone talked about they don't have enough people to have conversations. There's an organization called Courageous Conversations. There's the Byron Stevenson Lynch America Project, and we can go on and on and on and on. There's even I believe in Minnesota the school that has the Jim Crow Museum, and there's a lot of things that we can actually do and talk about. But I think more importantly, I think there needs to be this overcoming of fear of communicating and standing up for what you believe is right. And I wanted to address, because earlier this whole N thing, this N-word thing, I said there are just as many ignorant black people as there are white people when it comes to the N-word. Let's be clear about it. And I think that if people have not learned or understood what that word meant, because I'm from the South, I'm from New Orleans as well. And one of the things I teach, I like to say, like when you read the play A Raisin in the Sun, Mom in Raisin in the Sun, she said, we packed up and left the South because of what? The N-word. There are ways to be able to teach students. There are ways of being able to talk to instructors. There are ways of being able to even talk to your colleagues. But if you're afraid to, nothing will ever change. And this is what I'm feeling like there's this looming air of fear of talking about anything. So I'm like, stand up. I'm just like, stand up. No, let her talk. I'm done.
We have some students in here that we have not heard from, and I really want to give space to the students before the time ends tonight. Yes, Ms. Jada.
Oh, I was just going to say one thing. I work for the school district, and I agree with what Ms. Carpenter said and what Mr. Alexander said. But I also wanted to make mention there are as a large portion of students who do not report racial issues because of backlash, because of retaliation. I had a student last week who told me they would not tell admin unless I was in the room. We, the black people in the district who are not on the higher up levels, who are in the buildings with the kids, we cannot be present all the time. And so the capacity for us is slim. And so how can we as a community, there are so many community supports. There's Miss Kara Bauer who supports students, Miss Natasha who supports students, Miss Verla who supports students. We have all these Black organizations who are supporting students, right? But we need something more because it can't be us every day. I don't have the capacity to be at 44 schools where thousands of incidents are happening every day. You know about the one that happened at Logan. There are so many unreported issues every day. I can't do it, Miss Stacy can't do it, Miss April can't do it. So we need something more, and it is hard to keep retention when you're not being supported in buildings. And so there is a larger conversation that needs to be had, and especially needs to be had, how can we support Black educators that are in the buildings? How can we do more? Because when we do more for them, we're doing more for our kids, and our kids also don't go to school unless they're there. They don't show up unless we're there. I can give you 5 names. I won't, because I want my job, but they don't come unless we're there. So we got to do something more, and it goes beyond a conversation. Some of us are going to have to do some more work.
So my name is Verla, and I'm going to take the mic for a second. I run an organization called The Way to Justice. I am the CEO and co-founder of the organization. It was created to be able to dismantle and disrupt systems that have oppressed. So that means that if District 81 is oppressing, then it's time that we tear it down. I am speaking from a standpoint of raising 7 children in the district, and every one of them have been the poster child that has suffered racial discrimination. I'm talking about teachers. I'm talking about people that we are supposed to trust our kids with harming our kids. So when I come to these types of spaces, I'm trying to figure out, what are we asking the district to do? It's been 20 years and we still having the same conversation and nothing is happening. So what are we doing to be able to ask the district, what's gonna change? We already know that Adam is not here, and you show up to the things that matter to you most. Why isn't he here? So that's a conversation that we need to be asking him. What are we doing to change? If he's not willing to change it, I'll be the first to call him out. It's time for you to resign if that's the case. That's right. We have children that are suffering, Black and brown and white and all different colors. When do we say enough is enough? When do we say, I'm tired of sacrificing and protecting people that come in, that's hired by the district, that want to cozy up to you, specifically ones that look like me. Don't bring a Black face to a Black face. That's out. As an organization, I've been in the middle to be able to try to mediate because we are trusted community members. I will hold that space, but at the same time, it is time to be able to hold the district accountable. And I'm not talking about sending the same people in the spaces to be able to get all the information and go back and have conversations. If this is something that is important to you, you should have shown up. And so I'm asking you tonight, what are we going to ask the district to do? We're all sitting around talking about training. We know that's out. We all talk about racial discrimination. We all know what that is. We can sit up here and say, oh, well, we can do this. We already know that DEI training is not it. We all know that. So what is our ask that we are going to ask the NAACP to be able to put on the table? We're not giving them an option. We're not giving them a choice. It's something that they must do to be able to create change.
Quick full disclosure, I was involved at the beginning of Cultural Responsive Classroom Management. I've trained with Allie, I've trained with James, I've trained with April. It is a program that was launched by the Washington Education Association. It was in all 57 buildings over 3 school years. The district has discontinued the program without even telling us, the trainers, why they discontinued it. I want to echo what Verla said. Training doesn't work in this district because, and I've been in the district 20 years just like Natasha, because every training ultimately defaults to white comfort. And until we actually change, making white staff comfortable, then nothing will change for Black students, Indigenous students, brown students. If we don't change that at the systemic level, then 20 years from now, we're having the same damn conversation. And I don't know what training will look like because they told us, without telling us, you don't get to do your training anymore. I have a suspicion that we were starting to push a little bit, and that got uncomfortable. What I do know is, as long as white people are comfortable in what they've always done in the schools, curriculum-wise, behavior-wise, whatever is happening in the schools, nothing is going to change. And it's not, and it's weird because I'm the embodiment of every piece of privilege this society has to offer, but until people who look like me show up and demand this shit, nothing's going to change.
Okay, thank you. I wrote a little something here just to help me so I could speak, and I think this will just be just about 1-2 minutes. But hi, my name is Mike Dix, and I'm a representative of the Wilson community. I am a dad of a 5th grader at Wilson and a dad of a student of the music teacher, Miss Knapp. I'm sorry for this issue. We are sorry for the issue. It was a mistake using inappropriate words in a music flyer in Wilson weekly newsletter. I know the Wilson community is compassionate, open, and never intended to cause anyone harm. I feel this issue was blown out of proportion. I wrote that. Now listening to everyone, maybe it wasn't blown out of proportion, but as you go further, maybe some results were blown out of proportion. In no way should music teacher Miss Knapp been punished so harshly and removed from her position as a music teacher at Wilson, where she has taught for 20+ years the art and history of music to our kids. Wilson and district leadership should have recognized the mistake, corrected it, disciplined it, learned from it, and then move on in a positive way. We should be teaching our kids mistakes are made. Sometimes they be corrected or not, and learn from them and move on positively. Overall, the Wilson community is sorry for the issue, has learned and should move on positively. Ms. Knapp should be welcomed back to her position at Wilson as a music teacher. No?
Hold on,
Hey.
y'all. This is how we can model what's called civil discourse.
But maybe you don't want to make it so conflicting.
We got to let this man speak.
Okay.
We have got to let this man speak.
Civil
Let him speak.
discourse, y'all.
I don't mean to be
Let him
offensive to
speak.
you.
Let him finish, and then we'll get back to it. Let him finish.
Yeah.
Should have known that. So they didn't do their history.
No,
It's not intention, it's impact.
Of jazz music.
I think it should be.
Did not start doing slavery.
It should be pointed out, and it should be educated and shown,
Well, how
and
can
then
you
say.
teach a kid when you don't even know the history? How can you teach these students if you don't know your job? If you've got the degrees, how can you teach them? Answer that for me.
I think maybe it was misinterpreted, and that maybe
No,
she
there was no
wrote it incorrectly.
I'm sorry.
Too.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, that's okay.
I want to give you the space to speak, but I will not allow you to speak something that is going to land inappropriately. And I know your intent and impact are two different things. Your intention is one thing, but the way it's coming out, it's not landing. It's not landing. It's not landing. So,
Man.
We have a
Hello?
student here that wants to speak. Please let the student speak. Yes.
I want to start off, first of all, I am a high school senior at Meade, and I just want to applaud District 81 for even having the conversation, because students from Meade are coming here in order to make their voices heard, and I genuinely do appreciate that. And I want to make sure, I had another thing to say, but I just want to address how we started that conversation. I want to say, first of all, I understand that you aren't clearly educated on these things, and that's okay. And I understand that this is a space where you're not understanding how to project what you want to say, nor are you educated to say those certain things, and that's totally okay. But I want to make sure that all of us are approaching this situation in a way that we are able to be educational. I don't believe that yelling at each other about these things are going to bring about change. That doesn't make people willing to hear what they need to do to change. It makes them feel like they're attacked for making mistakes. And I do believe that the position your school district took in removing that teacher was correct. I do believe that. I do not believe that she should be allowed back into that position. And I understand why you don't have that position, but I feel like this should be a space in where we are looking to educate and not belittle people for having those things, because realistically, you do not have that education, and that is all right. But just moving on to what I was even gonna say, I just wanted to address that. But growing up in the Meade district and coming from District 81, because I was a Westview kid up till 3rd grade, and then I moved to the Prairie View district, I never felt so different as to when I made that transition. And then especially middle schools and high schools not having those outlets and resources, because we don't have a Black student union like Shadow does. We don't have Black teachers. The only Black teachers we have work with our special needs students, which is amazing and wonderful, but we just don't have those outlets there with those kids 24/7. They don't have the attention to give to us, and that's totally okay. So I'm kind of wondering how, even though this is District 81, I totally understand Meade is kind of out of your district, but how do we bring that support to the whole community? How do we make BSUs something that's accessible for everyone? Because I know, especially for me, I would love it if it was something even once a month where the community got together and we were able to have those open conversations and able to have a voice for those students. It's something that I think would be really positive, and I wonder if that's something that you as teachers and staff, I know that people in higher positions aren't here today, but I do acknowledge that teachers have the ability to reach those people that I don't.
We have someone here from the Wilson community. I know that someone spoke as a representative for that community, but just to let you know that one voice does not represent everyone who is a part of that community.
Hi, my name's Tanya. I'm also a parent of a 5th grader and a 2nd grader at Wilson. I will be very, very brief because I know there's a lot of folks that would like to speak tonight. I just want to say thank you so much for having this conversation. And I just want to say that Mr. Dix and I probably have very different views of this topic, but I just want you all to know that there are lots of folks at Wilson who believe very importantly that this conversation needs to happen, and that feel that even if their children are white, their children are hurting from this and what has happened. And so I wanted you all to know that even though we're a very small elementary school, it's not just one voice there. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Sharina Carruthers. I'm here as a community member. I am a parent. I have one person who's graduated high school and another who's currently in high school. And my ask tonight would be that we shift the conversation from safe spaces to a place of accountability. A safe space. We have a lot of people in this room, and we cannot guarantee safety for everyone, as evidenced by your standing, right? Did you feel safe? There was a moment. So let's shift from safety to accountability, because as I think about my experience as a parent and the advocacy that I've had to do repeatedly for my children, I think it's ludicrous. I'm watching my words. I think it's outrageous. And I say that because if someone would hold another adult responsible for my child's education when I'm not there, then maybe something would change. If I didn't have to be the one doing all the questioning about why are we still reading To Kill a Mockingbird, that's another issue I would like to address. Maybe not today, but let's just cross it off. But I would ask, that's my ask tonight, can we shift to a place of accountability? Because each and every one of us, we hear things all the time, and if we could just say, ooh, right? Or that wasn't right. I know it's hard, but I don't get the luxury of doing easy things. I don't get the luxury of having lighter skin. I've had to do the hard things my entire life and I don't get the privilege, right? I don't get the privilege. And I would ask that you all remember that, because my children also don't get afforded that privilege. Being Black is deadly. That's a fact. All the research says it. Being Black is killing people. Yes. And so I would ask that we just all be accountable to the words that we're saying, to the actions, our behaviors, and especially as adults who are entrusted to care for our children during the day. Thank you.
Hello. I'm really, I'm not trying to be another white dude here, and I'm going to open it with that, because I'm here for my partner who's on the school board as part of our women of color majority on the school board. She does legitimately want to be here. They're having a board meeting tonight, and for her it was really important to push and advocate for what happens with the bond after it got shut down recently, because that's a lot of students that are lower income that are going to be negatively impacted because that bond did not pass. And for her, she's like, I want to be there. Jeff, our cat's dying. You're going to this instead. Because this thing is important. So, but I do know, I won't speak for other board members, but for her, she wants to connect on this. She just doesn't want to do it on a board night. So that's the biggest thing for me. Like, I just do want to say, like, there are board members that want to connect. They want to hear this. I heard about this stuff, I will say personally, before it hit the papers, because my partner, and she's Dr. Bedford, she is published on incorporating critical race, the tenets of critical race theory in high schools, like that there is a positive to do that. So I do think there are wider conversations, and I think incorporating the board would be fantastic. And that's really the only thing I wanted to say, and just say that, like, I'm here on behalf of my partner, so.
Okay, hi. Yes, my name is Leslie McAuley. I am this man's wife, and I stay out of the public eye on purpose. I've been here 35 years, raised 4 children in Central Valley, the worst district in this area for diversity. So I want to just say to you all, so you know I'm old. That's first of all, I'm old. I've been here a long time, haven't I, Dr. Finnie? You know. Why is society constantly trying to cancel us out? Why is it that we have people coming and telling us what this young man has tried to graciously tell us, but these people are ignorant. They don't know anything about our culture. They don't even know that it's wrong to say slave, or what was it, honey? What was the other word? Hobo, and all these other terms in school, and expect to keep their job. I have lost many jobs in this Spokane area because of something I've said or something I've walked wrong and could not claim that job back. So this teacher should not be allowed unless she goes and learn about African American history. She should know. You should know. Don't put it out of your mind. We are still going to be here. And as long as I can walk this earth, I'm going to walk right up to that Central Valley district, and I'm going to talk to them about how they treated my children. I don't get over that, and how your children are getting treated. It's the same conversation for 30 years. I've been here, and I've seen it. And we have to advocate, get together, and do something on behalf of children. I don't want my children to have mental problems because they were raised in the district that hoop and holler, like to call them hobo, or no, the district out there that where you are, that got together for basketball or something and was hooping like saying they were monkeys. Come on now. Yeah. Why do we have to put up with that? That is not appropriate, and we should say something. I am demanding that every school in Spokane area have Black History Month programs for kids. I can't believe I walked in schools and they say they don't know what Black History Month is. And that's a lie. They do know, but they don't feel they have to do anything. So we have to demand that they do it. Teach these children what Black history is about and stop degrading Martin Luther King's name and his contributions and the contributions of African Americans in this country. We have done a lot to build this country, and we should not be degraded. Thank you for listening.
I just want to say something. My name is Stephanie Courtney, and I'm with the Learning Project Network, and we created STEP teams and revived certain STEP teams across the community. And a lot of our students, when they came into the STEP team, they were like, Miss Stephanie, we want to have something that represents our culture. And we were getting ready to have like our very first STEP show. And we had talked to the couple of the administrators about where we were gonna have the STEP show. And the first thing that came up was, well, if we have too many of these kind of students, we're worried about fights. We're worried about trouble. And I end up having to take the STEP show off the campus. I didn't choose any campus. I started to say to myself, you know what? This is not something that the school should have, but should be blessed with. Meaning, this needs to be an inside-out kind of approach where we are supporting grassroots organizations to build our students up so that when they go into the school that we know is broken, that still has a lot of work to do, they are able to walk in there confidently and with the leadership skills they need in order to help tear the systems down. And when we talk about accountability and you hear people speaking openly and passionately, many of the adults that are standing in this room have suffered trauma from the educators in this space. When we talk about meaning, just space of Spokane, meaning when I was 2003, I moved back here from New Jersey, engulfed in just culture and Black leadership and people doing amazing things and doing it unapologetically. Someone came to me and said, hey, Stephanie, I remember you doing STEP team long time ago. Do you want to come into the school? Yes, I do. I go into the school. This is a time when they had a program very similar to what Dr. Finnie is talking about. College students going in there. The systems are racist. So you're sending college students into a space where they're experiencing the racism, and the first thing they're thinking is, I'm not staying in Spokane. We are a college town that cannot retain college students, and I will keep saying it because I've seen it too many times. Too many of my people that are smart and bright choose in their sophomore or junior year that they are not staying here in Spokane, and their parents are encouraging them to leave, their teachers are encouraging them to leave, and that brain drain, all of this stuff that we poured into these college students, they're already making the exit plan, and then you're going to California, New Jersey, and Texas and seeing these beautiful spaces that are being created out of our pockets. And so when we're talking about sending college students into the battlefield, have we really prepared them to deal with the teacher that they love and they say something racist to them, or they don't want to be accountable for something? We're asking children to fight a battle that grown adults need to stand up against. And if you hear me speaking passionately and you hear me saying no, that doesn't mean that I am being hostile. That means that you have crossed a boundary that a child may not recover from. Not every child comes from a supportive family that when they're being knocked down, they can stand back up. I want to say this last thing. My mom and I were talking about this. She is an advocate as well. And we said, wouldn't it be ironic if we all dressed up as slaves and showed up to the school to sing some jazz and do a little jiggle? How would you feel? It would be so uncomfortable. So why would you ask these innocent children that don't know the essence of wet nurses, of black families being pulled apart during slavery? See, slavery for some people may just mean picking cotton. But what for other people who come from those generations and those ancestors that were murdered and killed, watching their fathers and grandmothers hung and burned.
That's right.
That's what slavery means to me. It's more than picking cotton and realizing your grandmother's hands are bleeding. It's more than just, black people living on the plantation, understanding that these families were broken apart, knowing when you were pregnant and you feel the kicking of your child, that they will not stay with you because they don't belong to you. Your body doesn't belong to you. Your child doesn't belong to you. Your life does not belong to you. Right now, we have an opportunity to not only heal, but to also recreate and reform what we want our communities to look like. Spokane has always had this thing of this passive aggressiveness or not wanting to go all the way in, or it's okay to be ignorant. It's okay for us not to know. But you go on Facebook and you bash somebody for a misspelled word. She could have clicked the synonym piece on the computer when she wrote up the letter and chose a different word. But that word meant something different to her. How is it that we have educators coming through our systems, teaching our students, spending over $50,000 in education, but you can't tell me you don't know the difference between the word slave? You wouldn't say, hey, everybody dress up like a prostitute.
That's right.
You know that's a negative word. You wouldn't say dress up like something that is the worst part of what you think society or something that hurts or something that feels something connection to you. We wouldn't do that.
Wouldn't ask them to come in here and
But
dress up
because
like
it
Nazis.
doesn't bother us, or it doesn't bother that person, we're writing it, we're seeing it, and the teachers are teaching it, and it's time for us to make a change.
Yes.
I see Miss April. You have the microphone.
Is this-
It is 8:25.
I just want to say that we need to stop the cognitive dissonance. If you didn't know that asking kids, and I'm not trying to be angry, I'm just very, you know what?
Don't apologize for your.
I am angry. I'm angry
You're-
because
yes.
kids are going through stuff,
Yes.
and so are we. So are we. Look up minstrel shows. Do that for me, please, sir. Research Donald Bogle, because he will break down the conditioning of making black people a permanent underclass in America, which is why this young lady says that kids in 2024 mock that history and call black kids slaves. It goes deep. So if it was an innocent mistake, learn from it and do some research. Because like Stephanie just said, y'all pay a lot of money. We pay a lot of money to get educated. We pay a lot of money to get educated and couldn't figure out how offensive and degrading it is to trivialize slavery. Please look up the history of minstrel shows. And please research Donald Bogle, because the cognitive dissonance, it was this. No, that's called I'm choosing not to see what's really there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Boo.
Also, thank you for the educators of color in the room. I see y'all.
Can I just want to respond. I'm sorry, I missed your first name. Mike. I'm an educator. I make mistakes all the time. I taught dividing fractions all wrong last week. It was a mistake. I owned it. This, when it comes to harming children, there's no room for that. It's not just a harm for a day, or it's not just a harm for a week. Those things, because I was that Mexican girl in elementary school who didn't look like anybody else, who was ashamed of what she looked like. I was too dark for my white friends, and I was too light for my Mexican friends. Like, I didn't fit. It stays with you forever. Like, I still live it today. I live it when I have with my own children, So it's not just oops, the teacher forgot how to divide fractions and she had to go back the next day and own it. It's You harmed a child. You harmed a community. You harmed children. That's not okay. And these educators who do pay a lot of money, I'm still paying my student loans, we can't make those mistakes. That's a non-negotiable. Maybe you don't deserve to be an educator. Being an educator is a choice that we've all made. There's no room for hurting and harming a child. We have to be a district that puts our foot down with that. And I don't want anybody to go after anybody's job. It's not like we're all gonna be on this mission to fire every single person that makes a wrong. But when we're entrusted with children's education, their well-being, their social emotional learning, their safety, we can't. I feel bad for people when they lose their jobs, but maybe she'll learn from this and be in a conversation where she's learning and taking trainings and understanding that what she did was harmful, not to just those group of students that she was with that day, but the district, the community, the Wilson, other educators, other parents. It was harmful. Yeah. And I think that's what we're all trying to explain, is that it's impactful, it's harmful. Right. What she did was harmful.
And just as a PS, we're talking about an episodic tragedy, but underlying it is a systemic cancer. We can talk about a tree, but we need to back up and see the forest. And that's what we're trying to, I think, my brother Mike, I think that's what we're saying is there's a forest, not just this one tree. We need to see the forest, and it's systemic, and it's cancerous, and it's not episodic, it's systemic, it's institutionalized. And so I think we can have more conversation and pinpoint the accountability and all the words that were spoken tonight. And I hope one day we can sit with folks that make decisions along these very lines. We're talking about not episodic issues, we're talking about systemic issues. The forest has a problem, not just that one tree. Yeah.
I appreciate the conversation tonight. You all came out and showed out tonight, and this is what community is about. It is about holding accountability. It's time. We're tired. We are tired of talking about it. We're tired of reading about it in the newspaper. It's time to do something, and it's time to continue to hold the systems accountable, not just Spokane Public Schools, but these schools in the Valley, in Cheney, in Medical Lake, in Central Valley, West Valley, the colleges. Gonzaga suffered when they had the bombing. Eastern Washington suffered when they had the vandalism. That's why this conversation is more than just what happened at Wilson. Wilson's one thing, but the first question we asked is every single year there's an incident. It's this region, and we're tired. We are tired of it. And so now I'm asking all of you how you came out tonight. We have to stay vigilant. It's more than just our education committee going out and doing the fight. It's all of us. Because let me tell you what I learned when I sat with Adam Swinyard. He said that there is a community of educators. There's a community of people who they don't even want DEI. They don't even want to teach it. They're pulling it. They're pulling it. They're trying to pull it, but we got to pull the other way. It's a tug of war. It is a war that we have to fight. And we can't just do it with this one town hall. It's more than that. It is holding everybody accountable in the school districts, not just Spokane Public Schools. Not just Spokane Public Schools, all of them. I want to thank you all for coming out. And shameless plug, just to let you all know, we're bringing back Challenging the Narrative. And our first guest is Adam Swinyard. So he will be held accountable. We're pulling him up there, and we will have questions for him. Madam Vice President and I will be interviewing him. So we're definitely going to have everything that we talked about tonight with Adam. And so we will publicize that, and it will be live for you all to watch. And we hope that you tune in. But we all have to, we are a community. We have to get it right. Yes, Mr. Bob, you have a question? I'm going to take your last question. I'm going to try to wrap it up, though.
We've talked about the issue. We all understand. But what are we going to do? Another one of these meetings, I don't think we'll do any more than what we've done tonight. What I think we ought to do is we ought to plan a strategy for making the change. I think we ought to meet together, not in large groups like this. I think we ought to meet together in groups of 10 people that we know and can have honest dialogue with, can call on the carpet, can pat on the back, and do what it takes to build not some superficial unity. I'll leave it at that.
And with that, that concludes our evening. I will close it out. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists, for coming. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Couple times.